It's the day we celebrate freedom and liberty for el pueblo mexicano, but also freedom and liberty for people everywhere. So I wanted to start by saying, Viva Mexico! And perhaps more importantly, we're so grateful that you're all here. My name's Antonio Ramirez. I'm a professor of history and political science here at ECC. I first encountered the Barbosa family back in 2015, the 20th century. Judge Barbosa visited my class. He regaled my students, including one of his nephews, who was one of my students in the class, with his fantastic histories of the Mexican Revolution and Mexican Elgin. But it wasn't until my students and I started conducting oral histories of Latinos here at ECC that I realized the undeniable impact Jane Barbosa had on her, and they all loved her. Being a kind and compassionate person is one thing, and leaving a mark on an institution as large and complex as ECC is another. Jane did both. Today we're going to hear lots of stories about her personal and professional legacy here at ECC and in the community, and a few quick thank yous. First, thank you to ECC, their Board of Trustees, and Dr. Sam and his cabinet for your ongoing support of Latino-focused programming here on campus and in the community during Latinx Heritage Month and beyond. Your actions show you take ECC's federal designation as a Hispanic-serving institution seriously, and you take seriously your commitment to District 509's diverse communities. I want to say thank you to the Barbosa family, who are here in large numbers today, especially Melissa Barbosa Guzman for your help with the preparations for this event, and also for agreeing to publicly honor someone who holds such an incredibly special place in your family.
To be here today in behalf of OLAS. My name is Miriam Salas. I am the Vice President of OLAS for the 2022-2023 school year, and I am very excited to be part of the team this year. As we all may know, Ms. Jane Barbosa was the founder of the inclusive organization OLAS, which stands for Organization of Latin American Students here at ECC. OLAS works to promote education, enhance awareness of the Latin American culture throughout a variety of activities, and encourage participation of all individuals. In this Latinx Heritage Month, there will be many events held at ECC. With the help of staff and students, starting with today's brunch kickoff honoring Ms. Jane Barbosa, followed by Latinas in Law Enforcement Scholarship Luncheon, Teatro que Importa, performing Alicia en Wonder Tierra, Fiesta en la Yarda, a traditional folkloric performance, Pascuela Herrera, and finishing off with Latinx Conexión. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for having us. And now, it is my honor to introduce the president of Elgin Community College, Dr. Sam.
Thank you and good morning. What a beautiful sight. I love it. I love it because it represents this college. We take our designation as Hispanic serving institution very seriously. And during the pandemic, we got even money just because of the designation. The federal government looked out for us and gave us money that went to students. And so this morning, I am so happy to be here to see all of you continue the work that we do to emphasize the fact that we are a Hispanic serving institution. In fall of 2020, many of our Latinx students were not able to come to college. Enrollment dropped by 19%. This semester, many of our Latino students have returned or are here for the first time, and the enrollment is up 11%. And more importantly, For those who responded to the question of ethnicity, 48% of our students are of Hispanic, Latino, Latinx heritage. 48%. It takes 25% to have that designation, Hispanic serving institution. We've doubled that here at ECC. Jane Barbosa is an integral part of this college. You cannot write the history of this college without mentioning her. I dug through my things and I saw my OLAS badge, and it reminds us that she, as the founder, has been very important to this institution. And the college recognized her with a Lasting Impact Award in 2016 to show that we acknowledge what she's done in this community. As I take my seat, I want to recognize a couple of people I see here. I see two board members. Mr. Sergio Rodriguez is here. Mr. Rodriguez. And I see Dr. Cleo Leos also here. And if I'm missing any other board member, let me know. But I want to assure you that this board has been committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion during my nearly 16 years here. And this board has continued to work hard to diversify its own board over the years. And I think we are turning the corner now, and the board, hopefully, very soon will reflect this community. Thank you, and welcome to the kickoff for this wonderful celebration. Happy Independence Day, Mexico. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sam. We are going to be eating brunch in just a minute, but first I want to invite up a dear friend of Jane's and of the Barbosa family, Father Dominguez, to give the bendición before we eat.
Heavenly Father, we come together this morning to thank you for every seat that has been filled here today, for each mind and heart that feels the presence of this room. We thank you. Father, thank you for bringing us together to share this meal and to remember our Juanita Barbosa. The people in our lives bring us such joy, and we are grateful this time to spend fellowship together. Help us to use this time to bond closer as a group, as a culture, as a community, and to learn from each other a little bit more. Bless our appetites, both physical and spiritual, to honor you in everything that we do. And we ask you this in the name of Jesus the Lord. Amen.
In the 1960s, though, many young Latinos and Latinas became politically active alongside the African American civil rights movement, the movement against the Vietnam War, the women's movement, the gay rights struggle, and anti-colonial movements around the world. They questioned their parents of the Mexican American generation's goal of assimilation into American society. Instead, Chicano youth in particular really embraced their Mexican heritage and their history as a source of pride. Instead of trying to be respectful in hopes that mainstream society would accept them as equals, Latino youth used defiance, they used protest to demand an end to racial and economic discrimination. So, in the 60s and 70s, Mexican American generation slogans like all for one and one for all, LULAC's slogan, gave way to Chicano and Chicana slogans like Brown Power and Viva la Causa. In places like Elgin, during this time, the Latino community was still relatively small to the rest of the country and actually pretty evenly divided between Puerto Rican and Mexican populations. Jane's brother, Judge Manny Barbosa, writes in his book, and this is a quote, that during this period, quote, both groups seemed aware of their cultural and slight linguistic differences. This is Mexicans and Puerto Ricans. And for some time, he said, they did not mingle socially. There was no hostility or resentment, just a quiet recognition that they were more comfortable with their own, end quote. He remembered, though, that eventually the two groups melded into something like one community. His neighbors were Puerto Rican, and he eventually joined their baseball league. He remembered that each group used to tease the other about how they spoke Spanish. But in the 80s and 90s, a dramatic rise in immigration from Mexico permanently reshaped Elgin and permanently reshaped the region. By the end of this period, Mexicans overwhelmingly dominated Latino communities here in Elgin and Illinois and in many parts of the United States. And I'm going to share some numbers with you. They're really incredible. In the 1980s, Chicagoland's Latino population doubled in size. In the 1990s, it doubled again. And during this period, as Chicago's suburbs boomed in population, among all groups, Latino communities in the suburbs were the fastest growing groups. Even when compared with the city of Chicago, the growth of Chicago's Latinx suburbs was really dramatic. In Chicago's Little Village neighborhood, which was called the Mexican capital of the Midwest in the 1980s, the Latino population grew by 16% between 1980 and 2000. During that same period, the Hispanic population on Aurora's east side grew 54%. In a nearby neighborhood, 226%. In another neighborhood on the east side of Aurora, 270%. One Elgin East Side neighborhood grew by 135% during these 2 decades. Another 185%. The far eastern neighborhoods of the east side of Elgin grew 500%, the Latino population, by 5 times. As early as the mid-'80s, there were 3 downtown Mexican grocery stores in Elgin, which gives you just a sense. All of this goes to show that Jane Barbosa's life traversed these 3 generations, right? She was born in 1945, just as World War II was ending and the Mexican-American generation was taking shape. She came of age in the 1960s and 70s, which no doubt shaped the strong sense of justice she brought to her work at ECC and across this community. And one example of this commitment is that after Congress passed the amnesty law, the Immigration Reform and Control Act in 1986, which legalized 3 million people, Jane helped establish ECC as one of only 2 colleges in the state that processed naturalization paperwork. Jane and ECC helped at least 1,200 people achieve legal residence in the 1980s. So the positive ripple effects of this legalization on our community is almost impossible to measure. Each of the individuals that attained legal status during that time was people who had previously been living in the shadows and outside of full citizenship. Each one of those folks was then able to fully participate in society. They were able to work on the books with their labor rights intact, buy a home, start a business, vote, even serve in public office. Importantly, the effects of legalization combined with this Mexican immigration probably increased the numbers of Hispanic students at ECC as well. As you can see from this chart, which documents the rise of Latino students from close to the founding of ECC in 1957 all the way to 2015. Okay. As an ECC employee, Jane also took groundbreaking steps to engage people at all levels of society. She engaged everyday families of young girls in the area, and she even engaged one of the most important icons of the 20th century here on ECC's campus. I'm going to show you a short 5-minute clip from a 2018 interview she did with former ECC leader Polly Nash, where she explains these 2 very innovative.
The handkerchiefs, we bought a bunch of napkins, red napkins, and I said, and we're gonna sing the colores for him, like they used to in the old boycott days.
Chicagolandia Oral History Archive, and it's the result of the last 5 years that my students and I have been recording oral histories of Latino trailblazers in the Chicago suburbs. The mission of this archive is to document, just as this interview did, the history, lives, work, and culture of Latinx suburban communities around Chicago. And we hope to use these stories to create community dialogue about the history and the future of Latinx communities in Chicagoland. So you can visit the website today. You can watch and listen in both Spanish and English to some of the incredible stories of Puerto Rican, Central. And with that, I'd like to invite up one of our future leaders, Melanie Menchaca of OLAS, who's going to introduce our next special guest speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. My name is Melanie, and I serve as the marketing manager of this year's OLAS team here at ECC. And I'm here to introduce our first special guest, Mayor David Captain. He is an Elgin native who grew up in the city's southeast end, attending local schools, and eventually received a degree in chemistry in 1970 from Bradley University. From there on, Captain was employed for 33 years as a chemist and subsequently as a plant process manager for Elgin's sanitary district. He and his wife Sandy were married in 1979, and he was elected for the first time to the City Council in 2005, and eventually elected as mayor of Elgin in 2011. And we are so honored to have Mayor Captain at this event celebrating the life and legacy of Jane Barbosa.
Thank you very much for that nice introduction. Really honored to be here today, and they asked me to say a couple words in remembrance of Jane, and one that came to my mind was that we were at the special event they used to do at the St. Joseph's Church for the fall event, and Jane was really the driving force in putting that all together and orchestrating it, and Manny and I, Judge Barbosa and I are there when she asked us to say a few words, and we're standing off to the side of the stage, and Jane looks over and says, "You two, I told you to be here." So I looked at Manny and I said, "Boy, you've got a big sister too." I have a sister that's just about the same. He says, "Boy, you're not kidding." And so we enjoyed her very much, and enjoyed stories with her. But really, it's something that's special to me. And Councilmember Martinez and I spent quite a bit of time trying to say what we wanted to say and get it on a one-page proclamation. So we hope we do justice to Jane. But I think I'll take a liberty here. And I see a lot of young people out here, and I believe if Jane was here, she'd say one thing to you. It's time for you to step up and start to be leaders and not expect others to lead for you. So today's the day to start taking leadership roles in whatever you do and whatever you choose to do. But let's move forward and honor Jane today with this proclamation. And again, I hope it does justice to her. Whereas Juanita Jane Barbosa was born on October 22nd, 1945 in San Luis Potosi, Mexico. She arrived in 1947 to the United States with her family and began her life in Elgin in 1957, attending St. Joseph's Catholic School and then St. Edward's Catholic High School. And whereas Jane began her career at Chicago Rawhide in 1985, moving into administration at Elgin Community College, focusing on registration and keeping data for the state. In 1986, Jane was instrumental in helping ECC become one of two colleges to receive the Immigration Reform and Control Act, or Amnesty grant. She was devoted to her work at Centro de Información in employment counseling, immigration, and English as a second language. She rounded her career out as a real estate agent, helping many in the Latino community secure their first homes in our city. And whereas Jane is recognized often for her contributions for ECC's multicultural student affairs by founding the Organization for Latin American Students, OLAS, heading the graduation celebration for Latina girls at ECC, in addition to initiating the Hispanic Heritage Month breakfast, and hosting a visit from world-renowned labor leader and activist Cesar Chavez. And whereas Jane will be remembered for her countless hours of devotion, volunteering to the Elgin community, where she was a passionate parishioner at St. Joseph's Catholic Church, an active advocate for Elgin Senior Center, and creating a space in the Elgin community where Latinos and Latin Americans felt empowered. And now, therefore, I, David Captain, Mayor of the City of Elgin, Illinois, do hereby ask the citizens of Elgin to remember and honor Juanita Jane Barbosa for her lifelong kindness, prolific volunteerism, and passionate commitment to the Elgin Latino community's political, humanitarian, educational, and social causes, and to declare September 16th, 2022 as Juanita Jane Barbosa Day in Elgin, Illinois. Thank you very much.
Good morning, buenos dias. My name is Elizabeth Del Rio, and I'm the current treasurer of OLAS. It's such an honor for me to be here today in this event and be involved in a club that she organized, one that I can share, explore my culture, specifically from my home country, Mexico. I'm have the honor today to introduce State Senator Castro. She was born and raised here in Illinois. After graduating Larkin High School, she went on to receive an associate's degree from Northern Illinois University. Senator Castro was first elected to the Illinois State Senate in 2016 and has then been a fierce advocate for accessible education for all Illinoisans. Please welcome Senator Castro to the event celebrating the life and legacy of Jane Barbosa.
Good morning, everyone. I had a feeling that clip was going to be played today because Melissa had sent it to me, and I had the distinct honor of knowing Jane, not necessarily of her contributions to this amazing institution, which I'm an alumni, and I better make mention of that, and it's something Dr. Sam is very proud of, but the fact that she believed in providing education and also teaching her students about activism, about what is their purpose in this world and how they can make this world a better world for one another. She talked about many of her historic feats. One of her favorite stories that I would love to listen to when she was around at Paul's, where Rosa was always helping them and talking about some of their history. And one was about the grape boycott that she participated in, and that she got members of her family, of her community, to follow what Cesar Chavez was doing to help fight for the rights of farm workers. She made sure her students went to the National Canto de la Raza every year to learn, to hear from motivating speakers, to inspire them to that next generation. And so when I saw that clip, it reminded me of the honor that she bestowed, because as she knew her time on this earth was leaving, Melissa had called me and asked me to give her obituary. Gave a tribute to her during her funeral. And it was a lot to think about. It was a lot to absorb. I have known Jane all my childhood. She was comadres with my mother, my parents. So our family has gone way beyond just knowing her as me as a student to the role I am in now. I ended up, making sure I covered a lot of that history, and I actually stumbled upon that video, and I never saw it. I had never seen it. And so when I was thinking about how to speak and how to honor a woman who has done so much for this community, who has instilled in many of us, including her children, her grandchildren, her nieces, her nephews, the importance of being present, being an advocate, especially for many of the people that don't have a voice or are afraid to use their voice. And that is the legacy I think she has left. And so as I close, before I unveil my surprise to the family, I would like every member, former member, whether it's worked with her as an organization, a former student of OLAS, because I see many of you, some of my classmates, please stand. And to the Barbosa family and to everyone here, we hear of Jane's army. I call this Jane's legacy. Because the fact of the matter is, we are that legacy to carry forward her dreams, wishes for all of us. And it is our job and our duty to bring the next generation of leaders to the forefront. Because we're not always going to be here, right? And we have to help that next generation empower themselves to help and step up, to be the voices for a very, very growing community that Antonio has talked about. So, my surprise. And it was I had to work with Antonio and we had to keep this a secret. But I have a State of Illinois proclamation given to us by the governor of Illinois, so I worked on this. So I would like to invite, stop Melissa, Melissa, Rudy, her grandchildren, her siblings, Elisa, Connie, I'm gonna forget, I'm trying to do it off the top of my head, Lily, Lupe, her grandchildren, nieces, nephews. I would like you all to come up here to receive this. And when the whole family. Proclamation of the State of Illinois, presented the 7th day of September 2022. Whereas Jane Juanita Barbosa was born on October 22nd, 1945 in Cerritos, San Luis Potosí, Mexico, to parents who worked the agricultural migrant circuit in Texas, Nebraska, and Illinois, eventually settling in Elgin. And whereas Jane became an influential community leader through her time at Centro de Información, Chicago Rawhide, the National Council of La Raza, and the Illinois Migrant Council, where she served as the organization's first female board president. And whereas Jane worked for almost 20 years at Elgin Community College as a recruiter, minority affairs coordinator, and founder of the Organization of Latin American Students, OLAS, at Elgin Community College. And whereas Elgin Community College, Jane Barbosa was instrumental in the college's designation as an entity qualified to process immigration paperwork for around 1,200 Elgin area residents. And whereas under Jane's leadership, the Organization of Latin American Students at Elgin Community College initiated the college's first Hispanic Heritage Breakfast, which has been celebrated on campus for more than 30 years. And whereas Jane passed away on June 25th, 2021 in Elgin, Illinois, is survived by her son, Raul Barbosa, daughter, Melissa, spouse, Jose Barbosa Guzman, 5 grandchildren, Anastasia, Juan Carlos, Adan, Alejandro, and Maximo, siblings, Connie, Elisa, Eliseo, Guadalupe, and Liliana, and Manuel, and many nieces and nephews. Therefore, I, J.B. Pritzker, Governor of the State of Illinois, join her family and friends in honor and remembrance of Jane Juanita Barbosa, who shall forever be an inspiration to the people of Illinois. Congratulations.
I do not have a speech or presentation today. They did ask if I would want to say some words, but I'm still very overwhelmed with so much love and emotion and loss, as I know many of you can relate when you lose a loved one. But they did ask if I would then be willing to introduce some of her former OLAS students, and I said I can handle doing that. I do want to take this moment, though, to thank Elgin Community College, Dr. Sam, the Board of Trustees, the committee who planned this wonderful, wonderful event. Thank you so much, especially to Armando and to Antonio. This is just wonderful, and I do appreciate you reaching out and just kind of wanting to run some ideas by me, and it came out wonderful. I know you did not have the chance to meet my mom, but we are just so grateful because what you've put together and organized, it's as if you knew her for many years. So thank you, Antonio, Armando, and the committee. I just want to thank them. My mom spent many years here at ECC. I think many ways ECC and OLAS are synonymous with my mom. She did participate quite a bit here, but I know she was most proud of what she did with the Organization of Latin American Students and the relationships she built both with the students and their family members. She was most proud of that. To this day, I still run into students. Is your mom Jane Barbosa? Is that Juanita? Yeah, that's my mom. How do you know her? Oh, she visited my school. I went to Dundee Crown, or I went to Elgin High School, and she had a table there and told me to go visit the college, or she talked to my parents about going to ECC, and I know Jane, and it happens probably weekly that I run into a former student of hers. And she was as a advisor, she served as an advisor, as a mentor, as a teacher, cooking for the students. making meals for them, chauffeur, taking them to different meetings or conferences, talking to some of the parents to encourage them. You know, we got this conference out in California, or we've got this conference in Colorado. What do you mean you want to take my kids to California or Colorado? And reaching out, and she was most proud of the role she played with that and everything she did with that. So at this time, I'd like to introduce some of her former OLAS students. The three I'm about to introduce all served on the board of directors, former board of directors of the Organization of Latin American Students. And I confirmed with them this morning, they all at one point served as presidents of the organization. And so I'd like to take a moment now to introduce Jose Alonso, David Lopez, and Marilyn Lopez, if you can please come up. As well as my mom's sobrino and former OLAS student, Vito Morales. If he would also come up, please.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully everyone enjoyed their breakfast this morning. I've been asked to speak and share my experiences with about Jane and the impact she had on my life. But before I go into that, I'd like to give some background information where I came from as a person. I'm a first-generation Mexican-American person here in the United States. I am Chicano. Okay. I'm a product of School District U46. I graduated in 1994. I attended Elgin Community College in 1994. The fall of 1994, I came here. I felt I did not belong on campus. I felt very subconscious about how I spoke with an accent growing up, you know, being bilingual, parents speaking primarily Spanish. I did not have much success my first year here. I dropped out spring of '95. I went to the workforce. Then I returned in the fall of '97, determined to get my education, but still fighting those demons of feeling of not belonging in college, not belonging here on campus. But that all changed when I met Jane in the OLAS meeting in 1997 in the fall. Hearing her speak passionately about human rights and stories of Cesar Chavez and the Chicano movement that she was involved in really motivated me because I can relate to that. Because my late father worked in California. He was a migrant worker in California. He was part of that movement in the 70s and 80s. And that's how I connected with Jane, the Chicano movement and Cesar Chavez. I quickly became involved in OLAS, became an active member. I started coming out of my shell with Jane's guidance. She taught me excellent leadership skills and how to run meetings and deal with adversity. She believed in me when no one else did. All it takes is one person to believe in you to have an opportunity to succeed. With her guidance, I graduated from Elgin Community College. I transferred to Western Illinois University. Then I proceeded on going to graduate school. With that being said, I'm taking Jane's philosophy of building through work and pride in what you do to my students at Ellis Middle School. I take that same approach for my students and in my career. It's a great building to work at. The students are fantastic there. I see myself and a lot of those students at Ellis, 85% Hispanic in that building. They need a chance. Please remember, it only takes one person to believe in you to be successful. In conclusion, it has been an honor speaking of my fond memories of Jane. May she rest in peace. Thank you, and God bless.
Buenos dias, good morning. My name is Marilyn Vega Lopez, and I am a former president of OLAS back in 1996 and 1997. And this gentleman standing right here is my husband, David Lopez. He was a president of OLAS in 1998 and 1999. We are current professionals. This was a building block for us coming here to Elgin Community College. I am a human resource generalist at Townsend's Industry, and my husband is a primary therapist at the Recovery Centers of America. And David and I are honored to talk about Jane Barbosa and the legacy that she leaves behind in us. Thank you, Melissa, and to the committee for allowing us to share what she meant to us. Jane made an impact because she guided and she mentored so many lives.
Well, let me tell you that, understandably, there's a lot we want to make. There's not enough time, right, to talk about all the great things that Jane has done for us. So Meryl and I are going to be a little selfish, and we're going to talk about how she impacted our lives. She exposed us to the possibilities. We were unpolished jewels, and Jane helped shine us. We struggled, some of us being first generation here in the States, possibly the first in our families to go into college. Jane showed us that sí se puede. Accomplished schooling and becoming a leader. Who has been to the National Council of Raza? I know that was mentioned. Okay.
I have. I got to go to Denver and to Chicago because of Jane. Not only did she allow us that experience, but she gifted us with her mentoring. Mentoring that is about her storytelling. Those stories were about her past experiences. How she told her stories impacted us in various proportions. It's sometimes we don't even recognize it. We don't even know. She planted that seed in us. As I reflect now, she always made herself available to us. Door always open. The phone call, her home, everywhere, anywhere. I remember our talks that I still hold dear. We talked about some adversities and challenges that I was experiencing. And she explained that these situations happen and not everyone will see it the same way. As long as my intentions were good, you push forward. Échale ganas, me decía. She exposed us to the political side of things, rules, orders, agendas, minutes, banquets, presenting, networking, and commitment. Let me tell you all that when you commit, you give it your all. ¿Por qué? Why? Porque sí se puede.
So being exposed to so many positive Latino movements was a first for me. Networking and meeting delegates from other schools and forging bonds with the people who are in the same group, right? So some of them are compadres of mine now, and that was based here in a part of OLAS. Not settling for scraps, that we deserve to be seated at the table. Sí se puede. I would like to end our thanks to this incredible woman. I attended the National Council of Raza banquet for the first time, and it was Philadelphia. They served us, they served us gourmet salad, and I think I mentioned it. And I was so confused because the presentation was beautiful. I sit down, it was this gourmet salad, and I look around because it was my first experience, and I said, ¿Qué es esto? This looks like leaves from my backyard. I didn't know, right? And that was it for me. As I looked, I was hooked. And I saw so many successful Latinos. And that's when I said, I belong at the table. Because sí se puede. And so I'd like to thank Melissa, the committee, ECC, alumni, this incredible honor of being able to speak here today. Thank you. And in honor of her, this is something that she taught us in the organization, and I hope everyone can participate in this right now. And it's called the Unity Clap, and originated with the farm workers. All right, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Well, when I was here, the NCLR was in Chicago, so I didn't get to travel anywhere. So kind of bummed out about that, about your stories. But no, thank you guys, everyone, for coming out today for not only this special day for our family, but also for a very special day for ECC and the Elgin Hispanic community to honor my aunt, Jane Barbosa. So I was asked to speak today because I had the unique experience of knowing my tia, not only as a kind and caring person that she is, but as an influential and empowering figure that transformed my college experience. When I started at ECC, I really didn't have any direction and was kind of clueless of the opportunities that ECC had offered to their students. But Tia Jane was here. So I remember going to her office, and during my visit, other students would stop in, ask questions, she welcomed them in. Pretty soon, staff members were also poking their heads in to say hi and talk about Cowboys or something. She loved talking about the Cowboys. And then, of course, the custodians also came in and chat with her and share chisme. She loved her chisme too. I didn't mind these meetings because I like chisme too, so I like to hear her. And I would see the custodians in the hallway. I'm like, hey, what's the latest? And so I got to be known as Jane's ahijado here. But it seemed like everyone knew her, and she made time for everyone. No, she wasn't above no one else, and everyone loved her here. But that day in her office, she filled my head and my schedule with ideas of how I could come use my time here to grow and learn and who I wanted to become. She told me about OLAS, and an organization she founded here at ECC that was filled with students with backgrounds just like mine. Hispanic kids who uplifted each other and who had goals and wanted to contribute to the community. And one of my favorite memories was going to a retreat that she organized. It wasn't NCLR, but it was in South Elgin. It's fun. But she told me there'd be free pizza, and I can't say no to free pizza. So I went for the weekend. But it was at this retreat where she and other people introduced us to many Hispanic leaders. We would discuss leaders like Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, and then she would share her personal stories of organizing and marching alongside, and even bringing Cesar Chavez to ECC. And it was she liked to say, oh, no one gets down, or standing room only. She loved telling that story, but we all caught our attention. And stuck with us for the rest of our lives. But then during this, she asked us how we would lead. She asked us how we could help our communities. She reminded us we're not different from any of these leaders. And she constantly told us that with ganas, we could achieve anything and be anyone we wanted to be. She always inspired us to push out of our limits. At ECC, one particular example was multicultural clubs needed an MC for their big event, Synergy. And my tia suggested I take on the role. I hated public speaking, I still kind of do, and never would have volunteered to MC an event. But with her encouragement, I ended up volunteering and MCing that night. And believe it or not, it was a hit. Probably thanks to me as MC, but whatever. Her simple guidance gave me the confidence I needed that night and left a lasting impression of me that it was okay to get out of my comfort zone and try new things. And I had many friends at OLAS who lacked direction just like me, but I know many of them transferred to four-year universities, got degrees, postgrad degrees, and now are leaders in their own communities. When my tia passed away, many of those same friends and classmates reached out to me, sharing their love for my tia and appreciation for the influence she had on their college experience. And that's what's so amazing about my tia Jane. Although I was her nephew at ECC, I was just one of her kids, as she would refer to us. She truly believed in every single one of us. She cheered for us and treated us all the same. And I was so fortunate to witness her passion for this community firsthand. And I'm grateful to this day in how she shaped me and empowered me, just like she did for so many other students before and after me. I know for many of us, ECC was Jane Barbosa, and Jane was ECC. This was her second home, and she would be so happy to know ECC was honoring her today. But she would be even more thrilled that her legacy lives on through the Jane Barbosa Scholarship, and that she will continue to help her kids at ECC become future humanitarian leaders in their communities. Thank you.
Thank you to the OLAS alumni, and I know there's so many of you, many more of you out there. So in our last 10 minutes or so, in the spirit of inclusion, in the spirit of democracy, in the spirit of levantando la voz, we want to open up the comments to anyone who in the audience might have a few words to say, a story to share, a memory either about Jane or about ECC or about the community. I know it's not easy to speak in front of a large group like this, but if anyone would like to share anything, please raise your hand and we will pass you the mic.
Because there are those who say that Dolores Huerta worked with Cesar Chavez, but there are just as many who say, no, Cesar Chavez worked with Dolores Huerta.
One of them, I always felt really unsure of my ability to speak English, and much less to be out in the community and be in public. And even not, a couple of years ago, she saw me speaking. She's like, wow, you've come a long way. And she motivated me because I used to be really shy. And she knew when I was here, she wasn't my advisory, but everybody went to her, so I would go with her too. And when I was with OLAS, everybody talked about her, and I would go to her, and she would always help me. And I was having a hard time, really hard time, at the nursing school here because I felt like I couldn't speak English, and I was just going through many things. And she would tell me, ¿Por qué no? ¿Por qué no vas a poder? Why can't you do this? Why not? What's going to stop you? And I thought, well, because I don't feel like I could do this. This is really hard. And she's like, it's only as hard as you make it. And I told her, I don't feel comfortable here. She told me, finish what you start and go on to do whatever else you want to do. So she gave me the option, and she gave me a date to go to Northern. She's like, they're having an open house. I'm like, oh, okay. My mom told me I couldn't leave when I graduated from high school. She's like, you could go to ECC and go the 2 years. They gave you the tuition free or whatever. Okay. So my mom didn't let me go to away because we don't do that. She said, you stay here and you can go to school. But Janie, who told me, open a house at Northern, go and just go see what you learn. Well, I went there, and that day I got so motivated, I signed myself up. I went there and I transferred over. I came home, I told Mommy, I'm leaving, I'm going to Northern. And I go to Jane, can you help me? Because you're going to have to talk to my mom. She's going to help me. And my mom knew her as Miss Janie. She said, hi, it's Miss Janie. So she knew Miss Janie because we had the National Council La Raza, and she helped talk to my mom to convince me to go. So my mom already knew her in church and stuff like that. They were women's from the church. So my mom, anything she would say was okay. So I got the blessing afterwards to go and become a nurse. But one thing that always stuck to me is sometimes you have to come out of your comfort zone. She's like, it's not going to be easy, but every time you feel that it's hard, that's the time you grow. And I think that's something that always I cherish with her, and I think that we always have challenges and adversities, and I think these things make us push and move forward and do things. But I have her in my heart, and I would see her, and one thing that always made me feel really blessed is we used to work next to each other, and one time she wasn't feeling good, and I helped her. She's like, look at what you're doing. You helped me as I helped you. I'm like, I would have never seen it like that. But she always was very humble about what she would do and how much she helped us grow. So I think we all have her in our hearts, and she would be resting in peace. I know she's looking down at us and feeling very happy how much love she gave us and how now she's helped us grow so much. So rest in peace, Miss Janie.
Loved and respected Jane a whole lot. She got into good trouble. And we've heard all about her activism, which truly speaks to my heart. But I'm going to tell you a story that really spoke to my heart about Miss Jane Barbosa. And her family knows this story. I was so tickled. So for many of you who don't know, or probably weren't alive at the time, October 25th, 1960, John F. Kennedy came to Elgin. And Jane was fascinated by John F. Kennedy. She loved John F. Kennedy. So much so that Jane skipped school to see John F. Kennedy speak downtown Elgin. And the story goes, so I remember, so I hope this is accurate, but she skipped school, and I think she got busted by her parents. I think they found out that she skipped school because Jane's picture ended up on the front page of the newspaper grabbing John F. Kennedy's hand. So she got busted that she had skipped school to see John F. Kennedy. But she was so excited when she told me about that story, and it showed me a whole different side of her. But I always used to tell her, I said, Jane, you were hell on wheels. And I wish I would have been a fly on the wall to watch you grow up and do all of these things that happened in your life before I even came to Elgin. So to her family, many of you who I know, love and respect so much, thank you for sharing Jane with us. Jane loved this community. Jane loved Elgin. She was proud. She was proud not only of Elgin, but she was a proud Latina. And she made that very clear. And she did everything she could to help the Latin community here in Elgin. So to all of her students, current and past and former, please keep her legacy alive. It is so important. So thank you, Jane, for everything you've done for Elgin, and rest in peace.
I'm Jane's first and only son, actually. That I know of, I guess. But no, I'm just kidding. But that's fine, because this is actually quite somewhat of a humorous story. I was witness to a lot of my mom's early activism. I can't tell you, but I have very vague memories of accompanying her on some strikes in the area. But her activism went beyond even this country. I want to say that it was 1985 or 86, there was a major earthquake in Mexico. And my mom decided to get organized with Ramon Angel Campos, who had a Spanish radio show here in Elgin, on WRMN on the weekends. And they were going to put together a benefit. And so they were asking people to call in with talent. They were going to do this at the Blue Moon. They're, just going to have a benefit and have people raise money for the earthquake, for earthquake relief. So I'm sitting at home with my grandfather and a couple of my aunts, listening to the radio, and something got into me, and I called into the radio station. And I said, Señora Juanita, yo tengo un grupo, queremos tocar para el beneficio. And she goes, oh, sí, dime, ¿qué tipo de música tocan? What type of music do you play? And I said, well, whatever you want. We could play cumbias, rancheras, or whatever you want. She goes, oh, wow, ¿y qué tipo de músicos tienen? So, well, we got a bass player, a guitarist, an organist, a drummer. And she's really, really excited, getting worked up. And at the time, there was a movie out called Born in East LA. And so she goes, y dime, ¿cómo se llama el grupo? And I couldn't think. So I said, Rudy Lopez y sus huevos rancheros. And she says, ¿cómo? And I said, Rudy Lopez y sus huevos rancheros. And she paused and she said, Rudy? And I said, Mom? And you could hear her like panicking, trying to go to commercial. And at the same time, I'm hanging up. And needless to say, my grandfather was laughing, my aunts were laughing, but I didn't see my mom for about 3 weeks. But yeah, she was really active in trying to, again, it was back an earthquake in Mexico, and she just was so committed to helping anywhere, any way that she could. And I miss my mom very much. And I'm so very proud of her. And thank you everyone for this event and for the honors you've given her.